There are moments in life when reality feels too much. A breakup, a failure, a loss you didn't see coming. And somehow, even when the truth is staring us in the face, we manage not to see it. We say, "I'm fine." We laugh it off. We blame someone else. Or we just forget it ever happened. Welcome back to Psyche Unveiled. But the question is, what's really going on when we do that? Why does the mind bend reality rather than face it head on? What if I told you, your mind isn't being deceitful, it's being protective. It's doing what it's evolved to do, keep you safe from emotional pain. Today we're exploring the hidden architecture behind this protection, the fascinating world of psychological defense mechanisms. Imagine your mind as a castle. Inside the walls live your deepest fears, insecurities, and memories, the parts of you that feel too raw to touch. At the gate stands the ego, the part of your mind that tries to keep peace between your instincts, your moral ideals, and reality itself. When something threatens that peace, when the truth feels too heavy or shame too deep, the ego quietly calls in its soldiers, not knights with swords, but defense mechanisms. These are automatic psychological responses that protect us from emotional pain or anxiety. They don't ask for permission, they just show up, like reflexes of the psyche. Freud first described them in his theory of psychoanalysis, calling them the mind's protective strategies. Later, his daughter Anna Freud refined and expanded the concept, showing how these defenses shape our daily lives. The idea is simple but powerful. We all distort reality, not because we're dishonest, but because we're human. Truth is, reality can hurt. It can challenge our image of who we are. For example, we may think of ourselves as kind, rational, or in control, until life shows us we're not always that way. Defense mechanisms act as emotional shock absorbers. They let us experience just enough of the truth to function, while softening the edges of what's too much. Think of them as psychological coping tools. Some are helpful. They help us adapt, heal, and grow. Others keep us trapped in old patterns, repeating the same mistakes while pretending not to notice. So the question isn't whether we use them. We all do. The question is, how aware are we of them, and are they serving us or stopping us from growth? Let's start looking at the most famous one, denial. Denial is the mind's way of saying, "No, that's not real." It's the refusal to accept reality because it's just too painful. When someone says, "I'm not addicted," while drinking daily, that's denial. When a person ignores red flags in a relationship because they can't bear the idea of losing love, that's denial too. In small doses, denial can help us survive shock. When tragedy strikes, our mind numbs us, saying, "It's not real." That's mercy, not madness. But if denial lingers too long, it keeps us frozen, unable to face what needs healing. The truth doesn't vanish. It just waits quietly to be felt. Then there is projection, one of the most common defense mechanisms in everyday life. It happens when we take an emotion we can't accept in ourselves and see it in someone else. A person who feels envy might call others jealous. Someone angry might accuse others of hostility. It's the mind's way of saying, "That can't be mine. It must be theirs." Projection protects our self-image but blinds us to our own shadows. Carl Jung later expanded on this idea, calling it shadow projection. He believed that facing these projections honestly is the first step toward self-awareness, because what we reject in others often reveals what we've buried in ourselves. Sometimes our ego defends us not with emotion, but with logic. That's rationalization, explaining away something painful so it feels justified. We might say, "I didn't really want that job anyway," or "They were never right for me." Rationalization softens the sting of failure or rejection. It helps us protect our pride, but it can also block genuine reflection. If we always explain away pain, we never learn from it. Then there's displacement, a defense mechanism that redirects emotion from a dangerous target to a safer one. You get yelled at by your boss. You can't yell back, so you come home and shout at your partner or kick the wall. Your anger was real, but it found the wrong target. Displacement keeps us from facing the real source of pain, but it also spreads that pain to others. Learning to name emotions where they begin, not where they land, is emotional maturity. Sometimes the mind hides a truth so deeply that it flips it upside down. That's reaction formation. We act the opposite of how we really feel to keep the real feeling unconscious. A person who feels hostility might act overly friendly. Someone struggling with doubt might become aggressively certain. It's not hypocrisy, it's protection. But the cost is authenticity. When we wear masks for too long, we forget what our real face looks like. Perhaps the most powerful and primal defense mechanism is repression, the pushing away of painful memories or desires into the unconscious mind. Freud called repression the cornerstone of all defenses. It's how the psyche buries what it cannot yet handle. A child who grew up in fear might forget those memories, not because they're gone, but because they've been locked away. Repression keeps the conscious mind safe, but what's buried isn't dead. It shows up in dreams, anxiety, or unexplained sadness. Healing begins when we gently bring those buried truths into awareness, not to relive the pain, but to release it. Not all defense mechanisms are harmful. Some, like sublimation, are signs of emotional growth. Sublimation transforms uncomfortable impulses into socially acceptable, even creative expressions. Anger becomes art. Fear becomes humor. Desire becomes motivation. Freud saw sublimation as the most mature defense, the mind's ability to turn chaos into creation. It's why so much art, music, and poetry is born from suffering. Pain, when understood, can become purpose. Humor is another beautiful defense, a way the psyche finds light in darkness. When used with awareness, humor gives distance between us and our suffering. It says, yes, it hurts, but I can still laugh. But humor can also hide pain when overused, or it becomes constant self-mockery. The line between release and avoidance is subtle, but important. Used wisely, humor doesn't deny reality. It accepts it and still finds warmth within it. Psychologists often group defense mechanisms into stages of maturity. Immature defenses, like denial, projection, or regression, protect us in the short term, but keep us from growth if we rely on them too often. Mature defenses, like sublimation, humor, and suppression, still protect, but they allow us to stay connected with reality while processing emotion constructively. Knowing the difference helps us evolve emotionally, from reaction to reflection, from avoidance to awareness. Every modern therapy, from cognitive behavioral therapy to psychoanalysis and trauma healing, owes something to Freud's early idea of defense mechanisms. Therapists today still help clients recognize these patterns. How do we avoid pain? What emotions do we repress? Where do we project blame? Awareness brings choice, and choice is the beginning of freedom. When we see our defenses clearly, they stop controlling us from the shadows. Instead, they become signals, guides toward what still needs healing. Understanding defense mechanisms isn't about pointing out flaws. It's about learning to see how our minds try, often lovingly, to protect us from pain. Every defense once had a purpose. Denial, projection, humor, rationalization. They all started as ways to help us survive something difficult. But as we grow, what once shielded us can quietly begin to hold us back. The first step toward living more consciously is simply noticing. When you feel yourself explaining things away or reacting defensively, pause and ask, what am I really feeling underneath this? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's shame. Maybe it's something you haven't yet had words for. That small moment of awareness, that pause, is where growth begins. Freud believed that insight itself has healing power. Not analysis for its own sake, but awareness that lets us see clearly. Because when you can name a defense, you step out of it. You stop being ruled by the automatic and start choosing how to respond. Living consciously doesn't mean being perfect or endlessly self-critical. It means being honest with yourself first. It's learning to say, that hurt me, instead of pretending you don't care. It's recognizing when pride is hiding fear or when humor is covering sadness. And when you begin to see your own defenses with compassion, something beautiful happens. You start to see others more gently too. You understand that anger often masks pain, that distance can be a silent form of self-protection. Empathy replaces judgment. In time, your defenses soften, not because you fight them, but because you no longer need them. Awareness takes their place. You become more open, more grounded, more real. Living consciously is a daily practice, noticing, pausing, and choosing truth over habit. Because real freedom doesn't come from destroying your defenses, but from understanding them deeply enough to finally let them go. And in that space, you meet reality not as an enemy, but as something worth facing. To be human is to defend, to protect, to shield. But it's also to awaken. The mind builds walls out of fear, and slowly through awareness, we learn to open the gates. When we face our defenses with compassion, we stop fighting reality and start understanding it. Freud once said that the goal of psychoanalysis was to turn neurotic misery into ordinary unhappiness. But maybe it's even simpler, to turn blindness into sight, to turn reaction into understanding, to see the ways our mind protects us, and to thank it before gently taking the reins back. Because when we know our defenses, we finally see the person they were trying to protect. And that's where true healing begins. Thank you for watching Psyche Unveiled. If this journey into defense mechanisms resonated with you, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing this video. We'll see you in the next video.